What if I told you that a song nobody had ever heard before, a lost Elvis-style track, could stop a packed auditorium in complete silence and bring even the toughest judge to their feet? Stay with me, because this isn't just a performance story. It's about doubt, identity, and the moment someone dares to bring an old soul back to life in a brand new way. And if stories like this inspire you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because journeys like this deserve to be shared. The lights inside the massive auditorium dimmed as the iconic logo of America's Got Talent glowed across the stage floor. The crowd buzzed with anticipation. On the judges' panel sat the familiar faces: Simon Cowell, leaning back with his usual skeptical half-smile, Sofia Vergara, adjusting her earrings and whispering something playful, Howie Mandel tapping his pen nervously, and Heidi Klum offering an encouraging grin to the next contestant waiting backstage. That contestant was 23-year-old Daniel Reyes. Daniel wasn't dressed in a glittering jumpsuit or a flashy costume. No rhinestones. No dramatic cape. He wore simple black trousers, polished boots, and a fitted cream blazer. His dark hair was combed back neatly, not exaggerated, not theatrical, just subtly reminiscent of another era. Backstage, he closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "It's not about being him. It's about honoring him." Growing up in a small apartment with his mother and younger sister, Daniel's life had always been filled with music. His late father had been a devoted fan of Elvis Presley. Old vinyl records would spin every Sunday morning. Daniel remembered standing on the couch at age 7, holding a TV remote like a microphone, trying to imitate that deep, velvety tone. But Daniel didn't want to be another impersonator. He had seen what happened to them online, comments like cheap copy, karaoke Elvis, nothing new. He loved Elvis, but he wanted to create something original. Something that felt like it could have been sung by the king, yet had never been heard before. When his name was announced, he stepped into the spotlight. The applause was polite but cautious. Simon looked at him and raised an eyebrow. "And what are you going to sing for us today?" Simon asked. Daniel swallowed. "It's an original song," he replied. "But it's inspired by the spirit of Elvis. I call it Heartbreak Revival." The audience murmured. "An original? In Elvis style?" That was risky. Simon tilted his head. "Originals are brave. Let's hope it's good." The music began, soft electric guitar with a vintage tremble, a slow drumbeat echoing like footsteps in a lonely hallway. Daniel stood still for a moment. Then he sang. His voice wasn't an imitation. It wasn't forced. It carried warmth, depth, and a subtle rasp that felt timeless. The first verse told the story of a man stuck between yesterday and tomorrow, trying to let go of love but unable to forget. The melody swayed like a classic 60s ballad, but the lyrics felt modern, raw, and honest. Simon's posture shifted. By the second verse, Daniel stepped closer to the mic stand, his voice growing stronger, richer. The chorus hit, and it was powerful. Not loud, not flashy, but emotionally explosive. It felt like discovering a song buried in time, dusted off and reborn. The audience stopped whispering. Heidi's eyes widened. Howie leaned forward. And Sophia pressed her hand to her chest. Daniel closed his eyes during the bridge. He wasn't on a stage anymore. He was back in that tiny living room with his father's old record player. He remembered the hospital room years ago. The silence after the machine stopped. The way music felt like the only thing that still connected him to his dad. The final note soared, not shouted, but sustained with control and aching sincerity. Silence. 3 full seconds of it. And then the entire auditorium erupted. The crowd rose to their feet in a wave of applause. Daniel opened his eyes, almost startled by the thunderous reaction. He hadn't expected this. He just hoped not to be embarrassed. Simon stood up slowly. That was the moment Daniel knew something had changed. When the noise finally settled, Simon leaned toward his microphone. "Daniel," he began, "I was ready to roll my eyes. I thought this would be another tribute act trying to ride on someone else's legacy." He paused. But that was clever. It felt authentic. It felt like you respected the past but didn't live in it. Daniel's throat tightened. Sophia spoke next. It was romantic and powerful. I could imagine that song on the radio. It didn't feel old, it felt timeless. Howie nodded enthusiastically. You didn't impersonate. You translated a feeling. Heidi smiled warmly. And that's what artists do. But it hadn't been easy getting there. Months before the audition, Daniel had almost quit music entirely. After posting a short clip online, he was flooded with comments accusing him of copying Elvis. Some were cruel. Some told him to get original. The irony crushed him because he was trying. One night, he unplugged his microphone and shoved it into the closet. Maybe they're right, he told his mother. Maybe I'm stuck in someone else's shadow. His mother, holding an old vinyl sleeve of Elvis, looked at him and said softly, "Your father didn't love Elvis because he wanted a copy. He loved him because he felt understood. If your music makes someone feel understood, it doesn't matter who inspired you." That night, Daniel wrote Heartbreak Revival. Back on the AGT stage, Simon asked, "Why did you choose to take such a risk?" Daniel took a deep breath. Because I didn't want to be remembered as someone who copied greatness. I wanted to prove that inspiration can create something new. The crowd applauded again. And then came the votes. One by one, the judges delivered their yes. For yes. Daniel covered his face as golden confetti cannons burst behind him. Tears streamed down his cheeks, not because he won something, but because he had finally stepped out of fear. But the story didn't end there. The performance clip went viral within hours. Viewers debated in the comments, some still comparing him to Elvis, others praising his originality. Yet the overwhelming message was clear: authenticity resonates. Music producers began calling. Radio stations asked for interviews. But Daniel stayed grounded. He visited his father's grave before signing any contracts. He placed a small speaker beside the headstone and played the studio version of Heartbreak Revival. "I didn't replace you," he whispered. "I carried you forward." The journey through the competition wasn't smooth. In later rounds, he experimented with different sounds, blending gospel harmonies and subtle rock elements. Some judges questioned whether he should stick to the Elvis vibe. But Daniel refused to be boxed in again. Each week, he reminded himself why he started, not for fame, not for viral fame, but for connection. By the finale, Daniel wasn't just the Elvis-inspired guy. He was Daniel Reyes, the artist who turned nostalgia into something living and breathing. Win or lose, he had already succeeded. And that's the message I want you to hold on to today. Inspiration is powerful, but fear of comparison can silence dreams before they even begin. Don't let the shadow of greatness stop you from creating your own light. The world doesn't need another copy. It needs your voice. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you miss or a dream you almost gave up on, take a second right now. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who needs that extra push. Because sometimes, the right story at the right time can be the spark that brings a lost song back to life. And who knows? Maybe your voice is the next one waiting to be heard. What if the greatest performance of the night was a song that technically never existed? Before we begin, I want you to imagine this: a packed auditorium, bright stage lights, 4 world-famous judges, and a young man about to sing something he claims was once written for Elvis, but never released. Sounds impossible, right? Well, stay with me until the end, because this story isn't just about music. It's about belief, risk, and the courage to bring a forgotten dream back to life. And if you love emotional journeys like this, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because every subscription helps us share more inspiring stories with the world. The stage of America's Got Talent shimmered under gold lights as the next contestant was announced. The audience clapped politely, not knowing what to expect. Out walked 26-year-old Marcus Hale. Marcus had an old soul presence. He wore dark tailored pants, a vintage white shirt with rolled sleeves, and polished leather boots. His black hair was styled neatly back, not exaggerated, just subtly classic. He didn't look like a parody of the past. He looked calm. Focused. At the judge's desk sat Simon Cowell, arms crossed as usual, scanning Marcus carefully. Beside him, Sofia Vergara smiled curiously. Howie Mandel tapped his cup lightly against the desk, and Heidi Klum offered a reassuring nod. Simon leaned toward the mic. "Marcus, what are you singing?" Marcus took a breath. "It's a song inspired by Elvis. It was written decades ago by my grandfather. He claimed it was meant for Elvis Presley, but it was never recorded. I rearranged it." The audience murmured. Simon raised one eyebrow. "That's a big claim." Marcus nodded. "I know." What nobody knew was how much this moment meant to him. Marcus grew up listening to stories from his grandfather, Thomas Hale, a struggling songwriter in the 1960s. Thomas had once traveled to Memphis with a demo tape, hoping to get a meeting with someone from Elvis's team. He never got past the front desk. He came home heartbroken but kept the handwritten lyrics in a small wooden box for the rest of his life. Before he passed away, he handed the box to Marcus. "Songs don't die," his grandfather had whispered. "They just wait for the right voice." For years, Marcus didn't open the box. He worked ordinary jobs, played local bars, and tried to find his own sound. But nothing felt special. Nothing felt meaningful. One night, after another small gig where people talked over his music, he went home frustrated and finally opened the box. Inside was yellowed paper. Faded ink. A title written at the top, "Lonely Flame." The lyrics were poetic. Romantic. Dramatic in a way that felt timeless. But the melody? There was none recorded. Just words. Marcus spent months crafting the music. He didn't want to imitate Elvis. He wanted to create something that carried that same emotional gravity, deep vocals, rich instrumentation, slow building power. Now, standing on the AGT stage, he gave a subtle nod to the band. The first notes were soft, low piano chords, a gentle electric guitar hum. The room quieted. Marcus began to sing. His voice wasn't flashy. It wasn't full of vocal tricks. It was controlled, warm, and hauntingly sincere. The lyrics painted a picture of a man who loved so deeply that even after losing everything, his heart still burned like a lonely flame in the dark. By the first chorus, something shifted in the room. The melody swelled. Strings joined in. Marcus stepped closer to the microphone, eyes closed, pouring everything into each word. Simon uncrossed his arms. Sophia's smile faded into stunned silence. Howie leaned forward. Heidi's hand slowly covered her mouth. The second verse grew more powerful, Marcus's voice dipping into a deep register that vibrated through the auditorium. It wasn't an impression. It wasn't karaoke. It felt original, yet strangely familiar, like hearing a classic you somehow missed your entire life. Halfway through the bridge, Marcus opened his eyes and looked out into the crowd. He wasn't just singing a song. He was fulfilling a promise. In his mind, he saw his grandfather sitting in a small kitchen decades ago, scribbling lyrics under dim light, believing nobody would ever hear them. Marcus held the final note longer than anyone expected. It rang out, steady and emotional, before fading into complete silence. No music. No movement. Just quiet. For 3 seconds, the auditorium stood frozen. Then the crowd exploded into applause. People jumped to their feet. Cheers echoed against the walls. The energy felt electric. Marcus blinked rapidly, trying to hold back tears. Simon stood up slowly, clapping. That alone sent another wave through the audience. When the noise settled, Simon spoke first. Marcus. I didn't expect that. At all. He paused thoughtfully. Whether or not Elvis ever saw those lyrics doesn't even matter. That song felt real. It felt important. Sophia nodded. It was romantic and cinematic. I could see that playing in a movie. Howie added, you didn't rely on nostalgia. You created something that stands on its own. Heidi smiled warmly. Your grandfather would be so proud. Marcus's voice cracked as he replied, that's all I wanted. But the road to that stage hadn't been easy. When Marcus first told friends about performing the Lost Song concept, some laughed. Others warned him he'd be accused of making it up for attention. Even his bandmates worried it was too risky. What if they think you're lying? One asked. Marcus had answered quietly, then at least I'll know I tried. The biggest challenge wasn't public doubt, it was internal fear. For weeks before the audition, he questioned himself. Was he worthy of carrying someone else's dream? Was he good enough? The night before flying out, he almost backed out. He sat alone with the wooden box in his hands. Inside was one more note from his grandfather he hadn't noticed before. It read, if you're reading this, it means you're braver than I ever was. That was enough. Back on stage, the moment of truth arrived. Yes or no? Simon asked, a small smirk forming. One by one, the judges voted. Yes, said Heidi. Yes, added Howie. Absolutely yes, Sophia declared. Simon paused dramatically. The audience held its breath. Then he smiled. It's a yes from me. For yes. Marcus exhaled sharply as golden confetti rained down. The crowd chanted his name. For the first time in his life, he felt seen not just as a singer, but as a storyteller. In the weeks that followed, the audition clip went viral. Millions watched. Comments flooded in from people saying the song reminded them of their parents, their grandparents, their first loves. Some admitted they cried. And the most beautiful part? A major producer offered to record Lonely Flame exactly as Marcus performed it, keeping the raw emotion intact. Marcus didn't know how far he would go in the competition. He didn't know if he would win. But he had already achieved something greater than a trophy. He gave life to a dream that had waited decades for a voice. And maybe that's what this story is really about. There are ideas inside you. Dreams passed down to you. Talents you're afraid to show because people might doubt you or misunderstand you. But songs don't die. Dreams don't expire. They wait. If this story touched your heart, take a moment right now, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs the courage to open their own wooden box of forgotten dreams. Because one day, the world might be waiting for your lonely flame to light up the stage. What if the moment everyone expected a cheap imitation turned into the performance that rewrote the entire night? Picture this, the lights dim, the audience whispers, and a young man walks onto one of the biggest stages in the world, not to copy a legend, but to resurrect a feeling people thought was gone forever. Stay with me until the end, because this story isn't just about an Elvis vibe. It's about proving that inspiration can become identity. And if you love powerful, emotional journeys like this, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps these stories alive. The stage of America's Got Talent glowed in deep blue as 24-year-old Aaron Castillo stepped into the spotlight. He wasn't wearing a sparkling jumpsuit. No oversized collar. No costume. Just black jeans, a crisp white shirt slightly unbuttoned at the top, and a vintage silver chain around his neck. His dark hair was slicked back, not dramatically, just enough to hint at another era. At the judge's desk, Simon Cowell studied him carefully. Sofia Vergara smiled with curiosity. Howie Mandel leaned forward, already intrigued. Heidi Klum gave him a warm nod. Simon spoke first. Aaron, what are you performing tonight? Aaron swallowed. An original song. Inspired by the spirit of Elvis Presley, but it's not a cover. The audience murmured instantly. An original? Inspired by Elvis? That was dangerous territory. Simon gave a cautious half-smile. Well, good luck. But Aaron's journey to that stage had been anything but easy. He grew up in a small house where music was always playing. His grandmother adored Elvis. Every weekend, she would blast old vinyl records while cooking in the kitchen. Aaron used to laugh at the dramatic vocals, the passion, the swagger. But secretly, he studied it. When he was 15, his grandmother passed away. At her funeral, instead of giving a speech, Aaron sang softly beside her casket. Not an Elvis song, but something he wrote himself. It carried that same soulful depth. People cried. That was the moment he realized something. It wasn't about copying a sound. It was about channeling emotion. Years later, when he began posting videos online, the comments were brutal. "Wanna be Elvis. Cringe. This era is over." The criticism stung. For months, he stopped singing entirely. One night, while cleaning out old boxes, he found his grandmother's final note to him. It read, "Music doesn't belong to one generation. If you feel it, sing it." That's when he wrote the song he would later perform on AGT. He titled it Echoes in Blue. Back on stage, the band began to play. A slow guitar riff echoed through the auditorium. The rhythm had that subtle rockabilly sway, but modern, polished, cinematic. Aaron closed his eyes and sang the first line. His voice was smooth and deep, but not exaggerated. It carried a gentle rasp, natural, controlled. The lyrics told the story of a man haunted by memories of a love he couldn't forget, walking through neon-lit streets chasing echoes in blue. By the end of the first verse, the audience had gone silent. Sophia's playful expression faded into focused attention. Howie's eyebrows lifted slightly. Simon leaned forward. Then came the chorus. It exploded, not loudly, but emotionally. Aaron's voice rose with power, rich and resonant, filling the room without strain. It felt nostalgic and fresh at the same time. Like discovering a lost vinyl record pressed yesterday. Halfway through the performance, something shifted. Aaron stopped trying to impress. He stopped worrying about comments, comparisons, expectations. He sang for his grandmother. The bridge stripped down to just piano. His voice softened, almost whispering the lyrics. You could hear a pin drop in the auditorium. Even Simon looked moved. Then the final chorus returned, bigger, stronger, triumphant. Aaron held the last note with control, letting it vibrate through the rafters before gently releasing it. Silence. 2 seconds. 3. And then the entire room erupted. A standing ovation. Aaron blinked in disbelief as thousands of people cheered. He hadn't expected this. He just wanted one chance to prove he wasn't a copy. Simon stood up slowly, clapping. That alone sent another wave of noise through the crowd. When the cheers finally faded, Simon spoke. Aaron, I'm going to be honest. When you said Elvis inspired, I was ready to hate it. The audience laughed. But that wasn't an impersonation. That was influence. And there's a big difference. Aaron's eyes watered. Sophia leaned in. It was romantic and cool. Young people could love that. Older people could love that. Howie nodded. You didn't try to be him. You brought that energy into 2026. Heidi smiled warmly. It felt timeless. But the biggest battle Aaron had fought wasn't on stage. It was inside his own mind. After years of online criticism, he almost convinced himself that loving a classic sound made him irrelevant. That modern audiences only wanted trends. That authenticity had an expiration date. He was wrong. The votes came in. Yes, said Heidi. Yes, said Howie. Definitely yes, said Sophia. Simon paused dramatically as the audience held its breath. Then he smiled. It's a yes from me. For yes. Aaron covered his face as golden confetti rained down. For the first time in years, he felt free, not because he impressed judges, but because he embraced who he truly was. The audition clip spread online within hours. Millions watched. Comments poured in, but this time, they were different. This gave me chills. Finally, something soulful. This feels real. Aaron didn't win the entire competition. But he won something more important. He found his voice. And here's the truth, you don't have to choose between honoring the past and creating the future. You can do both. Inspiration is not imitation. It's evolution. If you've ever felt judged for your taste, your passion, your style, don't silence it. Refine it. Own it. Turn it into something only you can create. If this story inspired you even a little, take a second right now, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who needs the reminder that their voice matters. Because somewhere inside you might be an echo, waiting to become a roar. What if the judges thought they were about to hear another Elvis copy, but instead discovered a song so powerful it felt like it had been hidden for 60 years? Before we begin, imagine sitting in that audience. The lights dim. A young man walks out with quiet confidence. The judges exchange that look, you know the one. The "we've seen this before" look. But by the end of this performance, no one is sitting down. And trust me, you'll want to stay until the final moment of this story. And if you love emotional, inspiring journeys like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this deserve to be heard. The stage of America's Got Talent glowed under warm amber lights as 22-year-old Julian Cross stepped into the spotlight. He wore a fitted black suit, no tie, the collar slightly open. His hair was dark, thick, brushed back neatly. Not exaggerated. Not theatrical. Just classic. From the judges' table, Simon Cowell studied him with visible skepticism. Sofia Vergara tilted her head curiously. Howie Mandel folded his hands together. Heidi Klum smiled softly. Simon leaned into his microphone. Julian, what are you performing? Julian's voice was calm but slightly nervous. An original song. It's inspired by the sound of Elvis Presley, but it's not a cover. I wrote it after finding something in my dad's attic. The audience murmured immediately. Simon raised an eyebrow. Finding something? Julian nodded. A notebook. My dad was in a small band in the early 80s. He loved Elvis. He wrote lyrics he was too afraid to perform. That sentence hit differently. Julian's father had always been a quiet man. A mechanic by day, exhausted by night. Music was something he never talked about. When Julian was 10, he once found an old cassette tape labeled Dreams. His father quickly took it away and said, "That was a long time ago." Years later, after his father passed unexpectedly from a heart condition, Julian helped his mother clean the attic. That's when he found the notebook. Dozens of handwritten lyrics. Some unfinished. Some crossed out. At the bottom of one page, a sentence read, "I wish I had the courage." Julian couldn't ignore that. He chose one set of lyrics titled Midnight Revival. They had that dramatic romance, lonely highways, burning hearts, redemption at sunrise. They felt like something that could have existed in the golden era of rock and roll. But there was no melody. So Julian composed one. For months he worked in secret, blending vintage guitar tones with modern production. He didn't want to imitate Elvis. He wanted to honor the emotion behind that era, bold, vulnerable, larger than life. Now, standing on the AGT stage, he gave the band a small nod. A low electric guitar hummed through the speakers. The bass joined softly. The rhythm had that slow hip-sway groove, subtle, tasteful. Julian stepped closer to the mic. The first note surprised everyone. His voice was deep but smooth, with a rich warmth that carried naturally across the auditorium. Not forced. Not exaggerated. Honest. The first verse painted a picture of a man driving alone through neon lights, chasing redemption after losing love. The lyrics were poetic but grounded. Emotional without being dramatic. Simon uncrossed his arms. By the time Julian reached the pre-chorus, the audience was completely silent. Then came the chorus. It rose like a wave, strong, soulful, powerful. Julian's voice expanded effortlessly, filling the space with controlled intensity. It didn't feel like a tribute act. It felt like a forgotten classic being born in real time. Sophia's eyes widened. Howie leaned forward. Heidi's smile faded into awe. And Simon. Simon stopped blinking. What if the judges thought they'd heard every version of an Elvis-style performance, until one voice made them question everything they believed about originality? Imagine this: the lights dim, the crowd settles, and a young man steps onto the stage carrying nothing but a microphone and a story no one expects. By the end of this performance, the entire room will be on its feet, and one judge known for brutal honesty will be completely speechless. Stay with me until the final moment, because this isn't just about a song. It's about daring to sound different in a world that demands trends. And if stories like this inspire you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so we can keep sharing powerful journeys like this one. The stage of America's Got Talent shimmered under soft blue lights as 25-year-old Noah Bennett walked into the spotlight. He wore dark slim-fit trousers, a charcoal button-down shirt with sleeves rolled neatly to his elbows, and polished black boots. His hair was thick and swept back naturally, not overly styled. He didn't look like a tribute act. He looked composed, quietly confident. At the judges' table sat Simon Cowell, observing carefully with folded arms. Beside him, Sofia Vergara smiled curiously. Howie Mandel leaned forward in anticipation, while Heidi Klum gave Noah an encouraging nod. Simon spoke first. "Noah, what are you performing?" Noah inhaled slowly. "An original song. It's inspired by the emotional style of Elvis Presley, but it tells my story." A ripple of whispers passed through the audience. Simon gave a cautious half-smile. "Inspired is good. Copying is not." Noah nodded. "I understand." But what the judges didn't know was how personal this moment truly was. Noah grew up in a house filled with silence. Not peaceful silence, heavy silence. His father worked long hours and rarely spoke. His mother left when he was 12. Music became the only way he understood emotion. Late at night, he would sit in his room with old recordings of Elvis playing through cheap headphones, studying how a single note could sound like heartbreak. But when Noah started singing publicly, the comparisons began immediately. "You're trying to be Elvis. That style is outdated. No one wants that anymore." Eventually, he believed them. He stopped performing. Stopped writing. Took a job he didn't love. For 2 years, his guitar collected dust in the corner of his apartment. Everything changed one night when he received a voicemail from his father, a rare occurrence. His father's voice was shaky. "I heard you used to sing. I should have listened more." Those words echoed in Noah's mind. The next morning, he picked up his guitar for the first time in years. Instead of trying to avoid his influences, he embraced them. He asked himself, what would that raw, soulful energy sound like if it told my story instead of someone else's? The result was a song called Second Chance Blue. Back on stage, the band began with a low, moody guitar riff layered over a steady heartbeat-like drum. The lighting shifted to a deep indigo. Noah closed his eyes and sang the first line. His voice wasn't an imitation, it was grounded, resonant, textured with life experience. The lyrics spoke of regret, distance, and the quiet pain between a father and son who never learned how to speak their feelings. By the end of the first verse, the auditorium was completely silent. Sophia's expression softened. Howie stopped moving entirely. Heidi's eyes glistened slightly. Simon's posture changed, arms uncrossed, attention locked. When the chorus arrived, it didn't explode loudly. It rose steadily, powerful and emotional. Noah's voice filled the theater with warmth and ache, every word intentional. The melody carried a subtle vintage sway, but the story was unmistakably modern. Halfway through the performance, Noah looked toward the audience lights and imagined his father watching at home. The bridge stripped down to just piano. Noah's voice trembled slightly as he sang, "We were strangers in the same room, waiting for someone to speak." A few gasps echoed in the crowd. Then the final chorus came, bigger, stronger, layered with harmonies. Noah held the last note with steady control, letting it resonate through the auditorium before gently releasing it. Silence. 1 second. 2. 3. Then the entire audience rose to their feet. Thunderous applause filled the theater. Noah exhaled sharply, tears forming in his eyes. Simon slowly stood up, clapping thoughtfully. When the cheers finally faded, Simon leaned into the microphone. "Noah, I'll be honest. I was ready to compare you. I was ready to say it felt dated." He paused. "But that didn't feel dated. That felt honest." Noah swallowed hard. Sophia spoke next. "It was emotional without being dramatic. That's very hard to do." Howie nodded. "You turned influence into identity." Heidi smiled warmly. "I felt every word." But the biggest moment happened backstage. After receiving 4 yeses from the judges, as golden confetti fell around him, Noah checked his phone. One new message. From his father. "I'm proud of you. Let's talk." Noah didn't win the entire competition that year. But he gained something far more meaningful than a trophy. He found reconciliation. He found courage. He found his own sound. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Sometimes we run from what inspires us because we're afraid of comparison. We silence parts of ourselves because the world tells us they're outdated or unrealistic. But influence isn't weakness. It's foundation. The key isn't to copy greatness. It's to build on it. If this story touched your heart, take a moment right now, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that their voice matters. Because somewhere inside you is a song only you can sing. And the world is waiting to hear it. What if the performance everyone expected to skip became the one no one could forget? Picture this. The lights dim inside the massive auditorium. The audience shifts in their seats. The judges glance at their notes. Another contestant walks out, dressed in a simple black suit with a vintage touch. And somewhere in the crowd, someone whispers, "Oh no, another Elvis-style singer." But by the end of this story, that whisper turns into a roar. Stay with me until the final moment, because this isn't just about an Elvis vibe. It's about fear, legacy, and proving that your voice can carry history without being trapped by it. And if you love emotional stories like this, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because your support keeps these powerful journeys alive. The stage of America's Got Talent glowed in gold and crimson as 27-year-old Lucas Reed stepped into the spotlight. He wasn't flashy. No rhinestones. No dramatic costume. Just tailored black trousers, a deep burgundy blazer, and a simple silver ring on his right hand. His hair was styled neatly back, subtle and classic. At the judges' table sat Simon Cowell, arms folded in cautious curiosity. Beside him, Sofia Vergara smiled politely. Howie Mandel leaned forward slightly. Heidi Klum gave an encouraging nod. Simon spoke first. "Lucas, what will you be performing?" Lucas took a breath. "An original song. It's inspired by the emotional style of Elvis Presley, but it's about my brother." The room quieted. "My brother?" Simon asked. Lucas nodded. He used to say music like that felt bigger than life. He passed away 3 years ago. This song is called Velvet Fire. The audience murmured softly. What they didn't know was that Lucas had almost never made it to this stage. 3 years earlier, Lucas and his younger brother, Mason, used to sing together in their garage. Mason played guitar. Lucas sang. They dreamed of big stages, bright lights, cheering crowds. But life moved slower than dreams. Bills piled up. Jobs took priority. And then one rainy night, a car accident took Mason's life in an instant. Lucas didn't sing for nearly a year after that. Every time he tried, the silence between notes felt too heavy. One evening, while cleaning out Mason's room, Lucas found an old voice memo on his brother's phone. It was Mason laughing and saying, "When we make it big, don't chicken out on stage, okay?" Lucas broke down listening to it. That was the night he wrote Velvet Fire. He didn't want to copy Elvis. He wanted to channel that dramatic, soulful intensity, the kind of voice that made pain feel powerful instead of weak. Back on stage, the band began with a low, bluesy guitar riff layered over a slow, steady drumbeat. The lighting softened to a deep red glow. Lucas stepped closer to the microphone. The first note was smooth, warm, controlled. His voice carried a rich tone, not exaggerated, not theatrical. Honest. The first verse told the story of two brothers chasing neon dreams under dim garage lights. The lyrics were vivid, emotional without being dramatic. The audience leaned in. Simon uncrossed his arms. By the time Lucas reached the pre-chorus, you could feel the energy shift. There was something real in his delivery, something that couldn't be rehearsed. Then the chorus hit. It rose like a wave, strong and soulful. Lucas's voice expanded effortlessly, filling the theater with depth and passion. It had that timeless sway, that classic emotional pull, but the story was deeply personal. Sophia's hand slowly moved to her chest. Howie blinked rapidly. Heidi's eyes shimmered. Simon leaned forward, focused completely. Halfway through the performance, Lucas closed his eyes. For a second, he wasn't on a stage. He was back in that garage. Mason was beside him, grinning, playing slightly offbeat like he always did. The bridge stripped down to piano and soft strings. Lucas sang quietly, almost like a confession, "If I light the stage tonight, it's your velvet fire burning bright." A hush fell over the auditorium. Someone in the audience sniffled. Then the final chorus.